exciting adventure or cruel blood sport, magnificent challenge or one-sided massacre. It takes strength, stamina, and skill. It costs real money. It's one of the games the big boys play. In the far northeast of Australia, the township of Cairns passes 9 months of each year in a kind of subtropical tourist brochure isolation. For the rest of the time, the 12 weeks from September to November, the pace of Cairns quickens. This is when the big boys come to town.
Cairns, Australia, Barn. That's the real name of the game. The other places may be good, but Cairns, when it's poor, is so much better than any place else at its best. It's phenomenal.
Frank Inchko and his wife Elle have come here from the US before. What brings them back is the chance of a contest with one of the most perfect fighting machines of the sea, the black marlin. But it's a contest that doesn't come cheap.
For an American to come out here, he and his wife are each about $15,000 US money.
Even at these prices, there is no shortage of takers, and the number is growing each year. The harbor is crowded with the specially equipped boats that make it all possible. Mostly they're hired, but if you want to buy one, about $85,000 gets you one of the best. Others come in around maybe $50,000. Below that, there's not even a bargain basement. Cairns itself is only the jumping off point. It is to the immediate northeast that the real adventure awaits, around the timeless coral reefs which act as natural breakwaters, providing the perfect balance of shelter and deep water in which the big fish like to run. One of the choice spots is off Lizard Island, which itself has now developed into a full tourist resort. At $1,000 a day, little is left to chance. Mostly these trips are pre-arranged, often in the previous season, so that an angler can be sure that his boat and crew will be right.
Hey, Frank, Al!
Hi, Joe! Tell us the story.
Have a good trip?
Great.
I think you timed it pretty good. We got one yesterday on 12, 277. How you, babe?
Good to see you.
Understand you've been buying boats and things?
Yeah.
Good, beauty.
Yeah.
Ready.
The boat they will use is called Hooker, and their first task is to make the easy run out past Ribbon Reefs to rendezvous with their mothership. Mothershipping is a major development in big game fishing. Instead of the small boat having to make the long run back to base each evening, she simply returns to the mothership, anchored some 30 miles out to sea. The angler gains the advantage of being able to stay out right up to sunset, the most important time of the day in marlin fishing. The mothership is called Reef Lady, and she will provide a luxurious home each night for Frank and his crew. Ed is the skipper responsible for all on board. And his wife, Beryl, takes care of the catering. A lot of planning goes into the meals. Manfred completes Reef Lady's crew of 3. On Hooker, they're in no hurry to try for the big stuff. The run to meet up with the mothership gives them a chance to troll a little. Deep sea fishing is a team effort. Peter, the skipper, Frank, the angler, Paul, the wireman, who has perhaps the most dangerous job in the team, and Errol. He's called the gaff man. For Frank, it's good to be back in Australian waters. And like a preliminary to the heavyweight contests yet to come, he winds aboard a Spanish mackerel. Along with the barracuda and the wahoo, the mackerel is one of what fishermen call the razor gang. He has very nasty teeth. Hooker is to boats what, say, a Ferrari is to cars, specialist near perfect. She is a 39-footer with a maximum beam of 12 feet 9 inches. She has a weather capability of about 25 knots, well handled. Frank and Elle spent a couple of weeks on the mothership Reef Lady the previous year. So this is like a homecoming to them. 10,000 miles from home, but back among good friends.
You've got your record now. What was it, 55 in 14 days you've got to beat?
Yeah. The success of the trip, we don't weigh it up on the dock, unfortunately.
Like most sports, big game fishing is a closely knit gathering of kindred spirits.
Take care. See you this evening.
The single lever control lets Peter get Hooker running at better than 30 knots when the need arises. Speed and maneuverability are what really count in a deep-sea chase. The game is about to begin. Like all games, it's played to exacting rules. The IGFA determines line classes. The strongest line permitted has a breaking strain of 130 pounds. The fish Frank is hoping for may weigh 10 times that. In terms of strength, the odds are heavily in favor of the fish. From the tower, Peter's view is uninterrupted. The baited lines held on outriggers until they get a strike.
On the left. Looks like a good fish, Frank. Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah, good fish. Okay, Frank.
It looks like a good one.
This is a nice fish.
The rod is quickly freed from its fixed position in the holder. Under the rules, it must be free to move on the gimbal of the chair if the catch is to count. Peter abandons the tower and comes to the bridge, where he can better sense Frank's requirements. Teamwork is now critical, the 4 men acting and thinking as one. Backing up the boat to shorten the line between man and fish, letting Frank grab a few quick turns to reel in the line a little at a time, without ever exceeding the 130-pound breaking strain and snapping the line. Now the fish is right close in, it's the wireman's turn. Tricky and dangerous, Paul's job is to grasp the wire trace and physically haul the great fish close enough for Errol to tag it. It needs strength and a lot of nerve. The fish is fighting hard. Hanging on, as he gains line and shortens the distance, he wraps and double wraps the slack in the wire around his gloved hand. If the fish beats him, he has to get his hand out of the way really fast. He's in trouble as the marlin twists across to the other side. His ribs take a terrible pounding from the transom. Holding it, following it, Errol ready with the tag, if Paul can just get it close enough. But the marlin shows no sign of tiring. Peter jockeys the boat so Paul can hang on. Frank, sharp and ready to take back control instantly if the fish should rip free from Paul. This time he's got it. Wrapping quickly now, boat and fish just a few feet apart. Errol aims the tag. He's got him. Tag. It's all over. But this is not one for the trophy album. They cut him loose. He's free. For each marlin they catch and tag, a separate red flag will be flown. But for a first day out, one is enough, and the dolphins of the reef accompany Hooker as she heads back toward the mothership. It's not only Frank's team who are tired. A solitary frigate bird homes in for a ride. And when they're willing to land on a boat in this way, it's a certain sign that they're close to death from exhaustion. About an hour will see them back to a shower, clean clothes, a cold beer, and some good companionship aboard Reef Lady. It's been a good start to 14 days of adventure. Hooker and Reef Lady have shared these waters overnight with another team, Tiki and Teddy too. Frank Inchco's team on Reef Lady planned for the day over breakfast.
Do the carrying, not the flying.
I got the feeling they're going to need a big wooden plug if you can throw it out there and make it wiggle.
I do too.
The one that they did. But that other thing, it must be in relation to something that they do eat, eh?
I reckon you could rig one of those big white squids up, let's go for one of those.
You could do that on plug. They're really stretching the imagination of. I was going to say, I've had one of those tail ones on the lures I've been throwing.
The talk is of angling, and when that subject is exhausted, they fall silent. But it never is. For the confirmed, angling is much more than a sport. And they will talk amongst themselves endlessly about this bait or that, the differences between rods and reels, the advantages of some way of doing something.
They're all right, but they seem to be very narrow in the water.
Angling is a total involvement. Success is elusive, and it does not come to the half-hearted.
I thought about going with the strip bait, but they don't eat it good.
The two boats prepare to part company. Ed plots Reef Lady's course for the full day's run to the point at which they will rendezvous again tonight, and then leaves Hooker as she sets out at speed to the fishing spot Frank has chosen as first up for the day. The gear is meticulously checked. Daily testing of the drag is as important to the angler as tire pressures to the racing driver. The bait lures must be perfect. Fish are hard to fool. The contours of the ocean bed below influence the behavior of fish. A sonar trace is used to plot it exactly. The tuna tower rises 22 feet above the waterline, about the height of a two-story building. Catching and preparing the bait is an exacting daily chore, which requires a good deal of skill and has to be done well. A few fishermen disagree and claim that marlin will strike at anything you drag through the water, but most share the view that there is no substitute for a well-baited line. The bait fish are gutted immediately after landing. This way they will stay fresh much longer. The scad is a favorite bait, frequently belly-rigged, with the leader pushed through the head of the fish, through the eye of the hook. Then it's tested to see that it's secure. Losing a bait is not exactly a turn-on. Both the crew members help out when needed in the daily baiting operation. A larger bait, a bonito, the hook being sewn onto its head. A good bait will last 4, maybe 5 days, provided a member of the razor gang doesn't get to it first. It's important the bait is not torn open by the water pressure as it's dragged along, so the carcass is surgically sewn up by Paul using a special Dacron thread. The bait is limbered up so that it will look alive, flexing and bending as it courses through the water. When complete, the prepared bait is ready together with a length of wire trace and can be stored till needed. The International Tagging Program is an effort to provide man with greater knowledge and understanding of the ocean environment. The yellow plastic tags will eventually be retrieved from the marlin and returned for a reward to the Central Administration Office by whoever finds them, so giving valuable information on migration patterns as well as an estimate of the total numbers of marlin being taken. Information of growing significance as man increasingly looks to the sea to provide food for his very survival. But before you can tag a marlin, you've got to catch one. The bait's out. The clip where the wire trace that joins the hook to the line is checked. The line itself run out to form a loop of slack immediately behind the fastening peg. A binding of tape to protect the line from chafing and losing strength. Frank Inchko is an expert, but anglers never forget the first time they sit in the chair. Most women scream. Most men panic. The fear is of being pulled overboard, or worse, the feeling of being physically torn apart in the unevenly matched contest. Unevenly matched in weight and size, that is, but the real contest is between the might of the fish and the mind of the man. And as in all true sport, man does not always win.
Get it? Oh, Jesus. Yeah, better bring it up and check it or something. It's been cut.
The bait is gone, not to a marlin, but cleanly severed by a barracuda or one of the other razor gang, whose marauding strikes are a continued nuisance. On an average day, 30 or more baiting fish are needed. Today, they will use many more. When the bait does not move well, the marlin will not strike. It's a case of reeling it in and starting again, adjusting the attachment and limbering it up a little more. Then try again. Topside, Paul can tell it is now moving freely, and that underwater it will be looking good to the eye of the marlin. From the tower, Peter spends more time looking back than looking forward. He's watching the bait.
Okay, Frank.
One's jumping now. Frank is tight on the fish. Now the strain is on. As big and strong as Frank is, he's released the drag to a large degree.
Okay, boys. That's a good fish. We want him.
With the harness on, he's soon back up to his fighting drag, in which the fish has to work like hell for every inch of line it gets. The fish is going crazy. Frank's left hand is on top of the reel. If the line breaks and the rod flies back, it won't smash into his face. This one's a real fighter. Peter backs up the boat, gaining line for Frank. Paul gets hold of the wire. And now, the tag. The marlin moves away, ironically having no idea of how it may be helping man to preserve not only himself, but underwater life as well. Reef Lady drops anchor about 30 miles from the coast in preparation for the late afternoon return of Hooker. For Ed, a little hand fishing to while away the time. And for Beryl, sunbaking, with no crowds to jostle you. But back on Hooker, it's a different scene. It's on again. Frank quickly gets tremendous pressure on the fish. Jumping beautifully as Hooker backs up. With good teamwork, it's all over quite quickly. Errol tags another marlin for the research program, right at sunset. The time of day the beautiful black marlin chooses most to jump and run and fight, providing the challenge in the games the big boys play. A week or so in the hard fights of a trip like this places a big strain not only on the team, but on their equipment as well. The 250 horsepower supercharged diesel engines receive a lot of attention. For the kind of money he's paying, the angler expects them to run perfectly. It's the same with the gear too.
I don't know if you noticed yesterday, this reel when we were fighting that fish was starting to get jumpy. Instead of the drag being nice and smooth and very even and constant, it was starting to go in jerks when it was releasing line. And what had happened is, over the course of some time, this drag system had gotten a bit of grease and dirt on it, and we were just about out of metho, so we added a little gin. Any good solvent will do, something that will just cut the grease. I've cleaned up this plate and the other plate here now, and it should be pretty good. I think when we put it back together, you'll find that it's just as smooth as it was when we first started or when the reel was brand new. This is a 12-0 fin oar. It's the most sophisticated game fishing reel made. The list price in the United States is about $895. They're a real nice piece of machinery. They do the job very well. It just takes a bit of routine servicing from time to time to keep them going. Main thing from my point of view is these little washers and spacers and things to remember where they go. If you get one of them out of place, it'll bugger up the whole reel system. How'd that crack look this morning, Paul, when you checked the arrow light?
Oh, I think it'll be all right, people. It'll fit me out anyway.
Clam bait?
Clam bait? Geez, they're cheeky, aren't they?
You want to call Townsville? Yeah?
It is a clam boat?
I'd say so.
Did you look through the binoculars, Ed?
Townsville radio, this is Hooker. Hooker, Victor Lima, 5638. Do you copy? Over. Can you report to him?
Victor Lima, 5638. This is Townsville radio. Good morning, would you go ahead?
Townsville, we appear to have another one of these Taiwanese clam boats up here today. Reef Lady and Hooker are anchored behind number 5 Ribbon Reef. What appears to be one of the clam boats is now steaming northward along the face of number 5 Ribbon, approximately 1/2 mile offshore. Do you copy? Over.
Romeo. Okay, yes, many thanks, we'll find it down.
Okay, Hooker, Victor Lima, 5638, clear with Townsville, switching 2524.
Romeo, look at down, slow.
If he really comes in and starts working, we'll get right back to Townsville again, hey?
Yeah.
Everything appears to be in pretty good shape now, Earl. Just don't drink the meth, though, because it's got gin in it. And gin will kill you.
Marlins strike best late in the afternoon on a rising tide and when a sou'easter whips up a fairly rough sea. Of the several species, the white are found only in the Atlantic. The blue inhabit most waters, but the striped and the black seem to be confined mainly to the Indian and Pacific Oceans.
Most anyone can go out there and drag a bait around that remotely resembles a living fish and catch a certain proportion of marlin. They're pretty voracious feeders, and it's not very hard to get a bite. You can catch them on artificial lures. They've been known to grab laundry being dragged around the back of a sailboat to clean it. What we're doing is trying to clean up our act and polish off the rough edges, pick up all the little percentage points that we can. The better the shape our tackle is in, the less fish we'll lose because of tackle failures. The better our baits are, the higher our percentage of strikes. The more alert and better trained the crew is, the less mistakes they'll make. And most of what we do is done because we feel it gives us a slightly better percentage than some alternate technique or the way somebody else does it. But overriding all of this is that we're there to have a good time.
Hey, space ball, Frank. Hey, widen on him.
This time, the boat is chasing the fish.
Keep widening.
Frank is working hard to get the line back. He's a big man, and when he rises out of the chair, his full weight is pulling on the harness. Or to put it another way, the harness is pulling at his hips and thighs with a strain of about 250 pounds. With maximum drag, each turn of the reel represents a weight of about 60 pounds. It's like lifting a healthy 5-year-old child with just one hand above your head. Not impossible, but how long can you keep it up? In Frank's case, long enough to land yet another good one. An experienced angler, and known as a good sport, Frank is content to tag and release about 85% of all the marlin he catches. But this is one he will keep. It's a big one. For deep-sea fishermen, 1,000 is the magic number, the number to beat. 1,000 pounds. This one, now showing the electric blue flash typical of marlin when it's captured, could come close. There's only one way to find out. The weigh station back at Lizard Island has seen some pretty impressive figures, but it costs the hopeful angler $50 a time just to check how good his catch is.
Damn thing never did want to quit pulling, Frank. He's going back up to...
The weigh-in is the moment of truth. Pride of achievement, justification enough for all the time and effort and money that goes to make this moment possible. And it's the time for everyone who has never taken part in this sport to try and figure out what it really is all about. What sort of person, man or woman, takes it up? There is no individual feature of the personality that has yet been found, though it helps if you are physically fit and wealthy. Like all sport, it is a challenge. You don't question it, you just accept it, and then work hard to beat it. Well, it's not the magic 1,000. You can't win them all. But good enough for a photograph. The pose does look familiar. Marlin is related to tuna. And those who know say that a barbecued marlin steak is a great delicacy. But there are a few countries, and Australia is one, where marlin cannot be sold for human consumption. So the big fish will be towed back out into the ocean. There, in nature's own process of ecological recycling, it will provide food for other creatures of the sea. Hooker's skipper, Peter Wright, first came to Australia in 1967. An American graduate in marine biology, Peter came down here to take a research appointment in the Antarctic. Then, a lucky contact with an old friend took him to Cairns and ultimately to the job as Hooker's skipper. It's a big job. To catch marlin, you need a good boat and a good skipper. The skipper's job is to control the boat, get it into the right position at the right time. But a skipper is frequently called upon, especially by inexperienced anglers, to assist with the entire strategy of the trip.
Frank, don't start line until it comes tight, mate. Not getting enough contact.
It may take hours to really tire a fit, healthy marlin. But as the fish tires, so does the man. And the longer the fight, the greater the odds in favor of the fish, as it becomes more and more likely that boat or gear will fail or that the angler will make a mistake. There's no mistake here for Frank. Another clean fight, another clean win. Another marlin tagged and set free.
Wow.
Really?
All right.
Oh, how pretty.
Somebody painted it.
When you pay $1,000 a day, you expect more than just a good boat, a good crew, and good fishing. So dinner aboard Reef Lady each night is something more than your basic takeaway. It is, in fact, sumptuous.
Unbelievable.
You kids go fishing. I'm gonna stay here with Burl. Just eat myself.
And corn on the cob along with it. With capers and so forth and so on.
Fishing one sauce, I think. One sauce, yeah.
Oh.
That's
It's
beautiful.
really tough going on these trips and having a rough.
Corn,
No corn. Lots of that.
Shop the corn.
really, Al, how about you? A bit of everything?
that's beautiful.
We'll find a nice one
Yeah.
with some caviar.
How do we get special wind alongside? Burl, this is delicious.
Yeah, I'm sorry, there's nothing
Yes,
left.
it
You're
tastes
taking at the end of the
wonderful.
time,
Please
right?
don't you all eat too well, because whatever's left over when we get on the boat tomorrow.
Each night the menu differs, but the talk does not. It's always about fishing.
Where do you start?
How it went today, how it will go tomorrow.
Zaka broke a line on one. John Cowell caught one and was fighting another one last I heard. Peter Bristow had 4 or 5 big fish on here. Woodbridge is right here near us, caught one 10.90.
Who's left up north fishing?
Nobody.
No, how far down did Bristow and
Well, Bristow was right beside us there most of the day.
where they anchor?
Number 5. Yeah, there was Bristow's fish weighed 10.01 today.
10:01.
It's a bit tough.
That's fish, no.
It's only in recent times that the area in Australia's northeast has really opened up. No one knows for sure why the marlin are so good here, what freak of geography and nature is at work. Certainly they are migratory, and one theory is that the marlin all come down to this Coral Sea area to spawn, before fanning out, as the tagging program has shown, to places as far away as New Guinea, Samoa, and New Zealand. By way of diversion, Hooker's team spend the morning of the second last day jigging. Lines are cast with brightly colored artificial lures attached and then rhythmically jigged up and down. A flowery cod, favored as a table fish in the US, not fancied here. A Chinaman or galloper. Pretty, but poisonous. A shark. They're everywhere, like the weeds in a garden. This one is a small whaler, but in spite of the size, they are aggressive predators. Unwelcome as he is, he does have a perfect right in these waters. Others may not be so welcome, and disputes constantly rage about territorial and fishing rights. Ray Morris, captain of the mothership Tiki, has been involved in the arrest of the trespassing clam boat which Hooker sighted and reported before.
Well, first of all, when we saw him 2 days ago, he headed out to sea. He seemed to be dodging us and the other vessels which sighted him. And then I think that he felt he was pretty safe after a couple of days, and then came in back of the reef and started his fishing. As we're travelling north up the reef, we found a dory away from the mothership. We saw that he was separated from the mothership by probably 2 or 3 miles, and we saw the opportunity for us to intercept the dory. We looked in the dories, and we found probably 200 or 300 clam mussels, which means that they've killed those giant clams to get the mussels out. And, well, it's just simply devastation when they do that. These clams take probably 100 years to grow to the size they do, and the little Taiwanese fellas come along and they just take the mussel out of them and kill them. We took the crew away from the mothership with the 2 dories in tow, and we took them further up the reef. I anchored the Tiki right here where it is now. The reef lady came along, and he took me back to the Taiwanese mothership, and I removed some of the parts of the engine so that he couldn't get away. Then we simply returned the crew to their own ship. The reason for that was that we felt they'd be more comfortable back aboard their own vessel, and we didn't want them on our boat anyway. They're a pretty grubby lot. And I thought it was the most logical thing to do, just simply disable the boat so they couldn't go anywhere and have them wait for the Navy.
Special ships of the Royal Australian Navy constantly patrol these waters. But the coastline is long and the Navy's task enormous. It's hard to prevent the intruders from entering Australian waters and fishing their fill. Responsibility for the arrested vessel has been taken over by the authorities, and custom officers and Navy personnel complete the seizure. The boat will be impounded and the crew taken back to Cairns, where they'll be detained until deportation can be arranged. There is little real anger directed to the individual members of the crew, but there is resentment of the unplanned destruction of a valuable marine species. It's the second last day of their trip, and still the big one eludes them. Gaffs go in, 3 in all. It's a big fish, and they're not going to lose it now. They take it aboard, And tomorrow, the last day, will see the long run home to Cairns. It's no good guessing at the weight. The scales will reveal that soon enough. But everyone does, with maybe $1 or $2 wagered here and there. The morning of the last day. Tomorrow will bring back a world of offices and telephones, people and problems. So the last day will not be wasted, and the routine goes on as usual. There are others also hard at work, like Sea Venture, which is hooked up. Yes, she has a good fish on. Hooker slows down to watch. Sea Venture's wireman is overboard. The danger is not only from sharks. It's easy to be sucked into the propellers of the boat, or worse, tangled in a wire, dragged underwater and drowned. Hooker waits until he's been brought to safety. On the run back to Cairns, they're hopeful of perhaps one final strike. If it comes, well and good. If not, at least they have the big one from yesterday safely aboard, kept cool to stop it losing weight. Yes, he's hooked up. And once again, they all leap into action as the marlin turns on another display. The fish has sounded, hit the bottom, and they're waiting for it to come up. Puffs of black smoke from the big diesels show how hard the boat is working. The four of them know each other's styles well. After 14 days, they've perfected their act. The fish is quickly brought in and tagged, then set free to swim away. The run back to Cairns is almost finished, so lunch today will be a quick and impromptu affair eaten on the job, the angler's equivalent of the office worker's sandwich at the desk. It'll taste a little different, though. Poi is a dish of raw tuna, soaked in lemon juice to cook it. It's diced up, then soy sauce, raw onion and lemon rings added. The yellow plastic container is optional. Delicately packed, exquisitely served, delicious. The homecoming of any deep-sea fishing boat is always assured of a good reception.
This is the place here that people look to for the marlin fishing. This is the Monte Carlo of big game fishing. This is where the action is. People from all over the world follow the action in Cairns. They know the names, who are the top skippers, the top anglers. The interest in Cairns can only be compared to something like the big race at Monte Carlo. It's on not one day, but 3 months. But all over the world, people that are interested in fishing are aware of it, they follow it. This is the ultimate. In short, as Monte Carlo is to Grand Prix motor racing, Cairns is to big game fishing. Let's slide forward a bit, Errol. A little more, Errol. Let us slide forward, mate. That should be good right there. Take your time.
Lots of tomorrow's anglers are here. Small fry, too young yet to even lift a rod, but already knowledgeable enough to make a pretty good guess at the weight of the trophy.
You're right, Al, he's a fat little turd. He's big. He's fat.
Normally, they raise them by the tail, but sometimes the weight can be too much, and then they lift them from the head instead.
About length. Right? Yeah, it's gonna hold. I just don't know if we got enough length again.
A long one this, they may be struggling to lift it clear of the ground.
Can you get another inch?
The angler's moment, personal and quite oblivious of the crowd, very private.
£1,166.
1,166 pounds. For Frank Inchko, it has all been worthwhile.
Where's Joe? You want to take it?
As Hooker heads out to sea next day, Frank and Elle are already halfway back to the United States, reliving memories and perhaps counting the days until they can rejoin Hooker and Reef Lady in the chase for the black marlin, one of the games the big boys play.